terms of, I read a lot of reports on different screenings or different assessments, and they often highlight the reliability, how reliable their scale is. And you got these alphas and all this, and reliability is like step one. So like I like to shoot long range, so this my stats buddy does too. So he put this PowerPoint together and he said reliable but not valid, which would be the top left, means they're consistent, you're accurate, but your scope's off, you're shooting way low, right? And so not reliable and valid means now I'm shooting consistently and I'm accurate and I'm hitting the bullseye. That's what I want, right? But you can also be neither reliable or valid, and that means you're just shooting all over the place, right? And so I don't want to have an assessment that's not reliable or valid. I don't want one that's reliable but not valid. And so we need to look at both of those, I guess. So Cronbach's alpha is an internal consistency measure. It's how reliable is the scale. And so I think this should be available for any scale to look at. So these are the ones we got in the BIMUS, and they're all 0.8, 0.9, and high 0.7s, which is acceptable for a screener. In terms of validity, I think the most important stat in validity is classification stats. And I almost see where test developers now, the newer ones, are not publishing these stats. And I don't know why. They're doing item response theory and all these other fancy stats, but they're not telling you whether the screener actually identifies correctly kids with problems and kids with not problems. And if I was going to choose it and pay money for it, I'd want that statistic. The other thing we did in terms of standardization was use a Cohen's d, which is an effect size, and we looked at the difference in scores between kids with known problems and those without problems. And obviously there should be a significant score difference, right? So in terms of the effect sizes, we looked at each of the different raters. So this is the teacher scores for clinical sample, and you can see that the kids that had clinical problems in terms of conduct, negative affect, and so forth, had Cohen D's all over 1 point something, which means they had a standard deviation higher score than kids without problems. And that's exactly what you're looking for. The other stat, as I said, that's most important to me is how well does it classify kids? And so the teacher scale or the teacher rating on the BIMUS identifies correctly 85% of kids. So sensitivity and specificity being the two pieces of that. So sensitivity is 83% sensitive to kids with problems, specificity 85%. The reason that's important is because you can increase sensitivity, but it's going to decrease specificity, if that makes any sense. So if I increase my score to capture more kids with problems, I could get that up to 95%. But I'm also going to identify a bunch of kids that don't have problems that I'm going to waste my time and resources on when I never had to. So the same kind of thing for parents. You can see the parents, the Cohen D's are all over standard deviations, which is what you want. And accuracy rates, 78%, that's pretty good for parent rating. Sensitivity and specificity around 80. And then kids self, Cohen D's are all approximating standard deviation, which is fine. And these classification stats are not as accurate as the parent and the teacher. But any of you that have adolescents and you ask them at the end of the day when they get home, how was your day in school, or how are you doing in school, or how's your grades, you'll know that their reliability may not be all that you desired. So in addition to standard scale for screening, we were honored when the BESS adopted flex assessments, because we had those 10 years prior. So we put flex assessments in the BIMUS system, and those are 1 to 3 item scales, would be equivalent to like a daily behavior report card or a direct behavior rating or IEP goal or a treatment goal. And these are informal scales that folks can build and put in the system so it's graphed over time. And that's kind of like, you get a trend line and a little graph. And the idea here was that we could do treatment with a kid and do a flex assessment every week. And then at the end of 10 weeks or 20 weeks, or when we thought there was an effect, you could give a standardized scale, which is more lengthy, 34 items, to look at with a reliable and valid measure to what